Welcome back to Jacques in the Garden. Today we're going to be trying something a little bit different. We're going to be doing a vlog. I have a ton of gardening miscellaneous work to do, so I figured I'd take you guys along and show you guys how I'm doing certain things in the garden. So let's start with this bed right behind me over here. So I woke up this morning, came out to check out the garden, and this is what I found. Needless to say, not very amused. All sorts of poles and pits throughout this garden bed. I've already dealt with some of it. This entire bed was entirely ripped out and all the plants were on the ground. These peppers were ripped out, the peanuts were totally gone. So I've already replanted a lot of those, but for now, let's go ahead and form up this bed so we can start planting some peppers into it. So the first thing I went and did is I got myself a bucket of compost. Now we're gonna move this irrigation out of the way and just fill in the gaps. Since this was originally a low-till or no-till bed, you know, at this point, I don't really know if I could call it that, given what the raccoons or skunks did here. So it's mostly on this end, so I'm gonna just kind of scoot the irrigation out of the way. And literally just gonna dump a pile of compost on there. That was a pretty quick fix, no big deal. I wish they didn't make such a mess, but what can you do? That's nature for you. For now, we're gonna let this kind of settle in, and we're gonna go absolutely wreck another part of the garden, but I'll show you why we're wrecking it in a second. All right, so this is task number 2 for today, and that is dealing with this whole strip of plants right here behind me. So, a year or two ago, I planted all these thorn boysenberries and blackberries. I was really excited for it, but turns out I really don't like thorned berries. And also, it turns out having them against the fence line they walk by all the time is really frustrating, especially when you're trying to pick some fruit. So I dug them all out in the winter, but now they've all come back. I thought I got them pretty good, but apparently it's true, like everyone says, blackberries are some of the gnarliest weeds that you can grow. So I have the big guns out. I'm gonna go ahead, dig up and sift this entire patch and then amend it with some compost. So let's get started. Just start scooping out the whole bed and sifting it all out. First, I'll probably come through and cut out all this plant matter though. So I actually was growing some daikon in there. It looks like I got a proper monster right here. Let's see what else I could find in there. So there's a couple daikon. I just found some beets in there I forgot I put in. There we go. A couple beets, that'll be for dinner. If you ever find yourself in the circumstance I'm in, which is pulling out all of these thorned blackberries, I wanted to point out a little tip. So these gloves are quite nice, but they're definitely not thorn proof. So you don't want to grab the plant here, because then you'll definitely get impaled. But if you grab it right here, you could get a full hand grip on it and it's not going to get into your gloves. Before we go ahead and sift this whole area out, it's much easier if we break up the soil and get out most of the roots, as many as we can at least at the start. So this cobra head is the perfect tool for getting down in there and sort of just pulling up all these root masses in nice big chunks. But instead of having to bend over and get in there, what I'm going to actually do is use the long handle version. So it's the same idea, except I get to stand up here and I don't have to bend over to do all the work. So you can see I'm getting full root sections, like there's a full plant with its root mass going at least 8 inches down into the soil. So that's why you really have to dig it out if you have something like a blackberry. So now we got the majority of those big root chunks out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the wheelbarrow and start shoveling it all out, sifting it, and then we'll put the soil back. Luckily, I let it dry out a little bit, which will make this job much easier. All right, don't worry, I'm not gonna make you watch this whole process, but I want to show you a quick little trick with a board. If you have your sieve set up, you use a board to drag your soil back and forth. It makes sifting it a lot easier on your body and also just more efficient and fast. So these are all the roots in this first batch. You definitely want to get all this out, otherwise it's just going to keep coming back. So moral of the story, be very certain that that's where you want your black or boysenberry or anything that grows with a rhizome. This is a backbreaker. But if I don't do it right now, it's just gonna keep coming back and causing problems in the future. So we've made some progress here. I regret everything about the decision of starting this project. This is absolutely not fun. But look what I found here. It's about the thickness of my forearm, and it's a tree branch from this jacaranda right over here. So this jacaranda is very pretty, but it's extremely overgrown, and that root right there is definitely sending a bunch of feeder roots into my garden and stealing a lot of water, which is probably why the jacaranda looks so good. So let's go ahead and cut this out. I'm going to use a Falco 600, which is a quick fold out saw. And actually what's interesting, I'll show you a close-up after. I've already cut this root once, but I only cut it and I didn't bother removing it. And it actually grafted onto itself in here and healed itself and then continued acting as a root. So let me show you that in a second, but first let's go ahead and cut out this portion right here. Can I say this saw is making very light work of this. All right. So there's that. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out so I can show you what I meant by that graft. This is the old root, and this old surface right here is where I had cut it originally. And what happened was that the root swelled and created a new bond to attach it right there. So effectively this root grafted onto itself and then continued to act as a root. So it turns out just cutting it once to try to kill it didn't really do the job. So in the end, I guess it's a good thing I'm doing this today. So I'm down here sitting in my pit of shame, the shame of planting a plant I didn't want, that I now have been sweating over for the past hour or so. And really this is what I'm pulling out, right? It's blackberry roots that have extended literally 1.5 feet down plus into the soil. It's quite the gnarly thing to dig out. I am not enjoying it very much, but I am making a lot of significant progress. All of these roots are absolutely getting obliterated, pulled out, sifted. I only have a little bit more to go, and then we're going to actually amend this, but I just wanted to show you the severity of this. This is 1.5 feet deep, about 2 feet wide, and it was from all the way back there to here, which so far has been 8 feet. It's taken quite a lot of effort and time. Now I have a little section behind me I need to do next, so I'm going to just go ahead and crank that out, and then we'll come back and we'll actually plant this area out. So it's been a while since you guys have seen my overwintered eggplant bed. It's looking honestly fantastic right now. The eggplant looks really healthy, the leaves look really nice. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fruit alone on this one plant, and each of them have another dozen flowers on them. So it's going to be a very bountiful early eggplant season, which I'm very excited for. I've been missing eggplant quite a lot. But I want to quickly show you guys this thing that you might see, which is that there are some wooden sides here. These are actually temporary. What I've done is I've sort of reformed this no-dig bed, and to do that I put some sides on because I wanted to make sure that all this straw and compost that I add didn't just slide off when I watered it. So it's actually held together quite nicely. I'll try to bring the camera in and show you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and pop off all the sides now. It's been sitting like this for, oh, I don't know, maybe 4 or 6 days. So there's the edge, and that's what the board right here was pressed up against. So the basic idea here, let me just back up. You could see there are very sharp lines on this bed. One right here, and one right here, and that's because the board was holding it in place. Now, as I get up closer to the eggplant, you can see just how healthy they are. This has been a no-dig bed. This is actually the first no-dig bed that I've built here in the garden. And it's holding up quite well, even though I've done a very poor job of irrigating it. And just look inside there. There's a nice eggplant hanging, a whole bunch of flowers. But yeah, these plants are looking really great. That one there in the shot is 3 years old. This is coming into its 2nd year. And then the tiny one over here is just 1 year old. So that's 1 year, 3, 3, 2. And you can see how much bigger there is year after year. And that's why it's really worth overwintering your eggplant. So let's go ahead and just make this a whole thing. Talk about exactly how I'm going to deal with this, how I'm going to reset it. This is a perfect use case for the biotone starter. This is filled with all sorts of beneficial mycorrhizae and bacteria. They're supposed to help kickstart soil, especially depleted clay soil like this one. So the next step is this thing right here, which is the power planter. This is the 24-inch, I believe. I'll put a link in the description. But what we're gonna do right now is basically entirely till this, but we're gonna be using a drill. So what I have in front of me right here is a bucket of compost. So I put down the biotone, I have the native soil, and now I'm gonna dump a bucket of compost right here. And now we're gonna be blending it all up. Well, I gotta say, that worked really well. I'm gonna go get another bucket of compost. So you're gonna have a really hard time mixing soil better than that. What I've now done is I've incorporated that biotone inoculant into the soil all the way down and all the way through. If you're wondering why I mixed the compost into the soil, it's because since I sifted it, all I had left were these really fine particles with nothing holding it together. So if I went to go water this, what would happen is it would compact into a solid brick of clay and silt and make it just a mess to grow in. By putting that compost in and the biotone, I'm fully building a sort of new soil life horizon by adding beneficial bacteria, mycorrhizae, and that compost is going to stop it from sticking together and forming a hard layer. So it's going to provide a little bit of aeration, and it's going to provide long-term soil organic matter, health, and water retention in the soil right here. So let's go ahead and mix up the rest, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to plant here. So it's day 2, and we're going to go over everything that happened after I sifted out that whole area, talk a little bit about what I'm planning on planting there and what I already have planted there. I want to give you guys a couple updates in this area as well. And then we're going to end with building a little bed right here. Or not a little bed, it's probably going to be a 4-foot wide bed. But let's take a look at that sifted area first. So here's the area that I fully sifted out from all the blackberry vines. Hopefully that's done and I finally solved that problem. If you're wondering what all these purple flowers are, it's from the jacaranda tree right here, which is a wonderful tree, but it's also the messiest tree in the world. And I also have now covered it in straw. And that's to help keep it covered, help keep some of the moisture locked in, so it's ready to plant into. And if I come over here, you could see the first thing that I've planted, and that is these 2 celeries that I grew from seed. So I started these from seed back in, I don't know, November, December, and I've been keeping them going ever since. So they were in 1-gallon pots. I transplanted them in here. This will give them a little more shade in the afternoon because these pots will block some of the sun, and I just need to make sure I water it enough. If you don't grow celery in the garden, I highly recommend you do. Wow, that bird is loud. I don't actually care for celery that much, but obviously it's a very useful thing when you need just 1 or 2 stalks. And rather than buying it from the grocery, what you could do is you could just grow a celery plant, and then as you need it, you just take off 1 stalk at a time, 2 stalks at a time, however much you need. So it's actually a really convenient thing to grow in your garden if you're cooking a lot. Now, if we come over here, you could see these kale plants. So these are kale plants. They're about 2 years old, maybe 18 months. What I did is I cut the tops off on 2 of these. There's another one right there. I'm letting 1 primary regrowth come back. So this is covered right now, and I don't know, like 20 plus different little kale plants. So I'm going to take some of them off because I don't need all of them to bush up like that. And I'm going to leave a couple primary growths. This is something you could do with kale. If you just come in and chop the top off, it will regrow. The advantage here is that they have a very established root system now because they've been growing for like 2 years. If you look down here, I cut it so that it's right above this wooden raised bed. And that's because I don't want it to be entirely blocked off from that morning sun. So they're coming back with a vengeance. That one was okay. The rest I topped because they were full of aphids and even a little bit of whitefly, which is something I haven't really dealt with before. So those are coming back beautifully. The tomatoes from the tomato trellis video are filling in wonderfully. I have a ton of tomatoes. I've already actually harvested some sun golds off that far plant over there. So those are being string trellised, and these I'm letting grow bushier, and I'm going on the trellis netting. Down here, the eggplants are doing very well. So I think I mentioned this before, but these 2 are 3 years old. That one's 2 years old, and this one is 1 year old. So we actually harvested 6 eggplants off these last night. I made a little Thai basil stir fry with it, which was really delicious. You can't get eggplant this early in the season unless you've overwintered it. So that's honestly one of the best reasons to do that. Coming down here, you can see I've gone to war with a lot of the tree collards. They just got a little bit too big and they got a little bit too sloppy. So I cut it back. I left one little leaf on there, which looks really silly. It will keep growing and be fine, but if that one doesn't, it'll probably send up a new shoot anyway. And I actually also did that to the tree collard in this bed, except I thinned it down to a couple of main stalks, and the one in the far corner there as well. Over here, the grapes are filling in really, really well, and they actually have quite a bit of fruit on them. So you could see some of these fruit clusters here. There's an example. You can see the baby grapes coming along. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's at least a dozen fruit clusters on here, if not more. So I'm really happy about that. What we're gonna do to support it is I put in these tree stakes. There's one right there, and there's one right there. It's kind of blending in. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in and put wire across those so that the grape has some more area to be supported from. It won't block much of the garden because already I think it's 9:30 and the sun's already starting to round over it. So this is a great area for it because it's only going to shade the driveway pretty much, which I think Tefra over there will appreciate. So this bed has already been flipped. I just added straw and compost to it. So let's just go ahead and do this one right here. Here's the instant progress to the end. So let me just quickly tell you what happened. I scooped up all the straw from here, some from this area over there, and I've put it on the base of the bed, and then I watered it very deeply. By doing that, I created a nice spongy wet straw layer, which will help break it down even faster and create a sort of wet medium between the earth and the compost layer on top, which will make the whole thing a lot easier to hydrate over time. The last thing I did is I just dumped a wheelbarrow of compost on top, and then I used this level head rake over here, which just has a flat bottom to it, to form this shape and form the edges. Final thing was just taking the hose on the center setting and watering it in very deeply. The reason why I like center is that high pressure stream or multiple streams sort of pushes beneath that top layer and gets water underneath it, which actually helps hydrate your bed a lot faster and more efficiently than if I were to just use the shower. So the next thing to do is just literally wait a day or two for this bed to settle, because I did fork the bottom layer and I added that straw material, which is now going to compress over time. So if I planted it right away, what will happen is the bed will compress and some of the roots from the plants will not be happy. So instead you want to give it at least 1 to 2, maybe even 3 days before you plant into a low till bed like this. I hope you guys enjoyed this vlog style. I figured it's the only real way I'm going to be able to keep up with all my gardening tasks while showing you guys some things along the way. So I'll keep doing these and I'll try to practice it a little more, show you guys more detailed information as I'm doing these different various tasks. But I find that this is going to be a fun way for me to actually get back in the garden while making some useful content for you guys without making a single topic focus. So let me know what you guys think, but be sure to subscribe to keep up with all the updates that are going to be happening here. And thanks for watching.